Hey there and welcome. Today, we are going to pull back the curtain on a really fascinating piece of technology. I want you to imagine a system that doesn't just throw market data at you, but actually tries to think about it. Like a really seasoned, long-term investor. So let's dive in and see how this thing actually works. So right off the bat, let's tackle the million-dollar question. How on earth do you build a machine to predict the future of a market? I mean, it sounds like something straight out of science fiction, right? Well, today we're going to unpack the architecture of a system that gives it a serious shot, one layer at a time. Okay, so before we get into the nuts and bolts of how it works, we have to ask a more fundamental question. Who's this even for? Because this system wasn't built for just anybody. Nope. It was designed with a very specific kind of person in mind, and understanding them is really the key to the whole puzzle. And really, this quote from the project's own documentation says it all. This is not some tool for frantic, split-second trading. It's built for silver stackers, investors who are absolutely playing the long game, planning out their moves months, or hey, even years down the road. And to really get it, just look at this contrast. On one side, you've got your typical day trader totally glued to their screen, reacting to every tiny little price jump and dip. And on the other side, you have the stacker. Their whole philosophy is the polar opposite. They are patiently, slowly accumulating a physical asset, buying when others are scared, and thinking in decades, not minutes. This patient, strategic mind is exactly who this entire system is built to serve. So before we pop the hood, here's a quick look at the app itself. You can see it's all set up to give you different layers of information. There's the main dashboard for that quick, at-a-glance gut check. Then you have the current and prediction sections for when you want to do a really deep dive. And there's even a dossier with research reports. It's a serious bit of kit. All right, now let's see what makes it all run. Okay, let's step inside the machine. And I want you to picture this less like just a piece of software and more like a digital factory. It's a whole assembly line, and it's designed for just one thing, to take raw, messy data and forge it into something smart and useful. At the highest level, the process is actually pretty simple and logical. First, it just pulls in a ton of raw data from all over the place. Then, all that data gets fed into this really complex processing pipeline. What comes out the other end is a set of what they call artifacts. Think of them as finished intelligence products. And finally, those artifacts are what bring all the charts and tools in the app to life. See? Simple, step by step. So, what are these artifacts anyway? Well, you can think of them as these highly specialized, purpose-built chunks of intelligence. You've got the feature matrix. That's just a giant organized library of all the data. Then there's the driver-weighted ML report, which is the key stuff coming out of the machine learning models. The prediction summary, well, that wraps it all up for the app. And get this, an LLM digest. That's a summary specifically designed for an AI to read and understand. Every single artifact has a very specific job to do. Now we're getting to the really cool part, the brain of this whole operation, the pipeline. And it's not just one giant, mysterious black box. Instead, the intelligence is built up carefully in a series of distinct layers, almost like a geologist reading layers of rock to understand the history of the Earth. And this is where you can really see that thinking process in action. It all starts at the most basic level, layer 0, which just gets all the data synced up. Then layer 1 starts taking simple measurements, returns, volatility, that kind of thing. Layer 2 is where it starts getting smarter. It adds context by figuring out the market's phase. Is it normal? Is it hot? Layer 3 goes even deeper and pinpoints specific events like market peaks and bottoms. And only then, after all that foundational work is done, does layer 4 even attempt to make a forecast based on everything it's learned. It's just a super disciplined, bottom-up way of thinking.
Now, this system has two different ways of thinking. The first one is something called an algorithmic block. The easiest way to think about this is like a simple recipe or a checklist. It's based on clear, human-defined rules. If A happens, and B happens, and C happens, then the result is X. It's totally transparent and predictable. The second way of thinking is what's called a fitted estimator. Now, this is where the machine learning comes into play. Instead of just following a strict set of rules, this part of the system actually learns from all the historical data. It's looking for subtle patterns that you or I might miss. It's less like a checklist and a lot more like intuition that's been built up from years of experience. And honestly, this might be the most important idea in the whole system. It doesn't just mash these two different ways of thinking together to give you one single answer from a black box. No way. It keeps them separate. It gives you the clear rule-based analysis and the data-driven machine learning forecast. The goal is what's called triangulation. You get a much more reliable picture by looking at the market from two different independent angles. It's a really humble and, because of that, a really powerful approach.
Okay, so with a system this complex, a huge question comes up. How can you actually trust what it's telling you? How do you know it's not just making things up? And that brings us to how the system keeps itself honest, which is every bit as important as the analysis itself.
I just love this detail. To make sure the AI assistant in the system gives you good, accurate answers, they don't just let it run wild on the data. It actually has to go through a strict onboarding, just like a new hire at a company. It literally gets an instruction manual it has to follow. And you can see just how structured that onboarding is. Before the AI can do a single thing, it has to load all these different files in this exact, rigid order. It starts with policy, then it gets the data digest, then a manifest of everything it's allowed to know. It even loads a guide on the right words to use and common mistakes to avoid. It's not just about dumping data in. It's about meticulously shaping its entire thought process. And the quality control doesn't stop there. The entire system, every single day, is put through this absolute gauntlet of automated tests. You don't even need to know what all these commands mean. Just look at how many there are. That tells the whole story. Every little piece of this machine is just relentlessly tested to make sure it's accurate and reliable. This, right here, is what it looks like to build trust in a complex system. So, we've seen this unbelievably rigorous machine that's been built for one very specific thing, silver. And that leads to a pretty obvious question, right? What's next? Could you use this same framework to analyze, well, anything? And what's really impressive here is how honest the project is about this. They draw a very clear line between what's possible and what's just hype. On one side, they say, sure, the framework can be extended. But, and this is a big but, each new asset needs its own dedicated training. On the other side, they warn you to avoid the crazy claim that one magic model could ever predict all markets. That kind of discipline is so rare, and it's absolutely key for building trust. This whole philosophy even extends to how they talk about the business. Check out this internal guidance. 70% of their focus is on the value the product gives you right now, today. The future roadmap? That's just 10%. It's the classic definition of under-promising and over-delivering, which is exactly what you'd want from a tool like this. And that leaves us with one last really interesting question to chew on. By being so incredibly rigorous, by focusing so obsessively on getting it right for just one asset, have they accidentally created a blueprint for understanding any market? Not some magic formula, but a template for how to build trustworthy, intelligent analysis, one careful layer at a time. It's a pretty powerful idea. Thanks for tuning in.